If you've seen any of my content, it's probably no surprise that I like anime. Hell, I've watched more of it than it's probably reasonable for one person to consume in a lifetime. It's just a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine to fire up an episode or two of seasonal anime every day while I'm having a meal or enjoying a cup of tea. It's also a great way to be introduced to music or light novels that I never would have been exposed to otherwise, and if I can find content with native Japanese subtitles, it makes for great language exposure. So every season I find myself dipping my toes into a bit of everything that's currently airing, separating the gems from the trash and hiding a little bucket behind my back for the slop that's comfortable to watch even if it's not super engaging. This isn't a comprehensive list of every show that aired this summer, nor is it even everything that I watched, but it's all the shows that were able to hold my attention to the end of the season, which I think is about the highest praise that I can give. There's also one show that I'll pick as the trash of the season that not only failed to hold my attention, but repulsed me so hard that I just had to vent about it, so stay tuned for that at the end. Let's start with the action. Kaiju Hachigo, or Kaiju No. 8 by Production IG, got a second season to pick up after the last, and it's a bit of a training arc for both Hibino Kafka and the rest of the cast, introducing new characters with a fair share of action-packed fight sequences. This show is about a world where legally distinct kaiju, don't say Godzilla, have been threatening mankind sporadically for hundreds of years, since the Edo period, and have recently started to act more erratically, with kaiju appearances becoming more frequent. Our protagonist, Hibino Kafka, always dreamed of becoming a member of the Japan Anti-Kaiju Defense Force, or Nihon Boeitai, a play on the JSDF. Yes, this means their acronym spells jacked off. Kafka was never really talented enough to make it into the jacked off, however, until one day he found himself in a hospital bed after a kaiju attack, staring down a small insectoid kaiju that then dove into his body, granting him the power to transform into one himself, the titular Kaiju No. 8. The name Kafka is obviously no coincidence, as Hibino Kafka's existence bears a lot in common with the main character of Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, whose already mediocre existence gets thrown for a loop when he suddenly wakes up one day as an insectoid monster. This show is straight up enjoyable at every level, from the action, to the animation, to the characters, to the music. There's also a lot of subtext to the show that makes it fun to analyze. I wonder what else started around the 18th century that threw the planet out of whack, and is suddenly getting worse. This one is a gem for sure, so check it out if you haven't already. Next up is Kijin Gentoushou, or The Sword of the Demon Hunter, by Yokohama Animation Laboratory, which is also enjoying its second cour this season. I'm gonna cut to the chase here. This show is also a must-watch gem, and all you need to do to get enraptured in storytelling is watch the very first two-part episode. Without spoiling anything, it's a period drama taking place towards the end of the Edo period in a world where demons walk among people. People may be quick to write this off as Demon Slayer light, and sure enough, while the animation quality doesn't hold a candle to Demon Slayer, the main appeal of this show is the more mature depiction of its character dynamics and their emotional growth over the course of the show. That being said, the action sequences are still plenty of fun to watch. Highly recommend. So whereas the last show could beat the allegations of just being a pale imitation of another show, this next one probably doesn't. Isekai Mokushiroku Mynoghra, or Mynoghra, or however we're pronouncing this made-up name, by Maho Films, can absolutely be summarized as Overlord Light. The show opens up on a terminal cancer patient who dies while playing his favorite 4X fantasy strategy game. The closest analog that I could think of is Endless Legend, although I'm sure the writer was thinking of a specific game when they wrote the source material. He awakens in an unfamiliar world, but with units and powers from his favorite race in the game, which happens to be the evil-aligned race, and immediately gets to work building his civilization from the ground up with the assumed eventual aim of world domination. I'm not gonna lie, this show does almost everything worse than Overlord, and if you haven't watched Overlord yet, by all means, just watch that instead. If you have watched Overlord, however, and you wanted more content along the same lines, this show certainly scratched the itch long enough to hold my attention all season. The story in Mynoghra also progresses at a faster pace than Overlord's, and while the latter loves to draw out certain reveals among seasons upon seasons of elaborate world building, Mynoghra takes some interesting twists in the first season that'll keep you invested. This one is slop, but enjoyable nonetheless. Let's keep the slop flowing like water, shall we? Mizuzokusei no Mahoutsukai, or The Water Magician by Typhoon Graphics, is another isekai that aired this season, and one of two about overpowered magic users, but this one managed to keep me gripped despite not really being noteworthy in terms of its animation quality or its premise. What kept me coming back to this one was actually the character dynamics. Early on in the show, you get something of a bromance going on between the main character Ryo and Abel, a B-class adventurer who washes ashore one day. Ryo is a weirdly lovable character for an isekai protagonist who are usually just written like self-inserts. The banter between him and Abel is an absolute joy to watch, and almost reminiscent of the banter between Hollow and Lawrence from Spice and Wolf.
Just kiss already!
There is also a female love interest that, despite being the main focus of the outro animation, only gets introduced in like episode 5. All the supporting characters are charming in their own way and seem well written in a way that leads me to believe that despite this show ultimately being in the slop category, I get the feeling the source light novel is actually a gem waiting to be uncovered, and it's definitely going on my reading list. Alright, I've got to mention this next show because while I have almost nothing good to say about it, it did in fact keep me engaged throughout the whole season. Clevatess by...
Laid Deuce? Is this studio really called Laid Deuce? Do they know?
Is a fantasy show about a world that is surrounded in all 4 directions by great beasts that are each individually powerful enough to wipe out all of humanity, but fortunately don't really seem to view humanity as much of a threat. Rather than living peacefully within their borders, the humans of course seek to raise their strongest warriors into heroes and send them to challenge the 4 beasts. The beast of the south, Clevatess, wipes the floor with the party of heroes sent to defeat him and retaliates by casually destroying the kingdom that sent them. Instead of continuing to wipe out all of humanity, Clevatess is swayed by one of the humans to save their child and then decide whether humanity deserves to be wiped out after raising it. This show is all over the place. None of the characters' actions really ever line up with their motivations, which even creeps into the initial premise for the show, and any and all tension feels incredibly forced and artificial. Clevatess will be strong enough to wipe out all of humanity one moment, and then a total jobber the next. The whole story revolves around magic weaponry that the heroes use, but in almost every combat encounter, the characters just don't use them for reasons that are entirely arbitrary and only work against their own interests. Clevatess will at one point say that he doesn't want to reveal that he's not guarding his territory, then reveal himself anyways 2 episodes later. I could write a whole video about the inconsistencies and plot holes in this show, but I think the amount of thought that went into the writing on this one can be perfectly summed up by the first line of the outro. Dainanaoji. Hang on, let me read the full title. Tensei shitara Dainanaoji datta node, kimama ni majutsu kiwamemasu. Or, I was reincarnated as the 7th prince so I can take my time perfecting my magical ability by Tsumugi Akita Animation Lab. Phew, can you tell this one's based on a light novel yet? They apparently title all light novels in Japan this way, so as to force buyers browsing through the mountains of content out there to get a full-ass synopsis of every book just by reading the title and seeing the cover art. Anyways, Dainanaoji is an isekai about... Wait, I guess I already explained it. The first thing you'll notice about this show is that the protagonist's design is absolute androgynous bait. The show loves to take the disarming look of the protagonist and then contrast it with how absolutely terrifying his obsession over mastery with all schools of magic makes him, not only to his enemies, but also to his allies, of which many of the former end up becoming the latter. This show is definitely a guilty pleasure, as there are no stakes and the characters aren't particularly well written, but it's just fun to watch the main character, Lloyd, flex his magic in new and creative ways every encounter. It's the good kind of slop. The next show I want to talk about is called Silent Witch, Chinmoku no Majo no Kakushigoto by Studio Gokumi, and it's about a young witch, Monica Everett, with crippling social anxiety but a savant-like aptitude for mathematics, which she applies to the field of witchcraft to become one of the 7 sages defending the world from a scourge of dragons. Now, of course, the show isn't about dragons, it's about Everett being assigned a mission to go undercover at a high school to protect the prince from assassination attempts. While there seems to be a lot of interesting dynamics at play in the world, the show puts the world building on the sideline, in favor of the interpersonal struggles and budding relationships and potential romance opportunities that Everett slowly manages to forge over the course of the show, in spite of her absolute inability to carry herself with any semblance of confidence. This show is extremely charming and well done in pretty much every respect, and I have a feeling that the source material is even better, but as it stands, the show on its own merits is absolutely a gem, and I highly recommend it to anybody with a soft spot for neurodivergent protagonists. Speaking of being unable to communicate, the next show is Game Center Shoujo to Ibunka Kouryuu, or Cultural Exchange with the Arcade Girl, by Nomad Studio, which is about Lily, a girl from England who moves to Japan with her family and has trouble making friends or picking up the language until she decides to visit an arcade, which in Japanese is called a game center, or geisen. It's there that she meets the store clerk, Renji, who tries to overcome the language barrier to show her the appeal of arcades. He does too good of a job, apparently, as Lily immediately develops a crush on him that motivates her to keep coming back to learn more. About Japanese, about arcades, and about Renji. Of course, the show is more of a slice-of-life comedy than a romance, and honestly, it's better off that way considering the age gap between the two. The show is cute as all hell, and unlike almost every other anime that features characters speaking English, Lily's voice actress is actually a native English speaker, although it's hard to tell with the way the script and voice direction are handled. It's managed to keep me engaged all the way through the season by introducing new characters to freshen up the dynamic, and it's heartwarming to see Lily bond with new friends through her experiences at the arcade. If you're looking for something cozy and easy to watch, this is the comfort slop for you. Fans of more focused romance anime are eating really good this season. One show that just recently made its way out of Netflix jail, which is when they decide to arbitrarily delay a release, which happens often enough that there's a whole name for it, is Kaoru Hana wa rin to Saku, or The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity by Cloverworks Studio. This one is a Romeo and Juliet-like romance between two characters that attend an all-girls and all-boys school respectively that despise each other. The name is a play on words of the two leads, Rintaro and Kaoru. Rintaro is a gentle giant who's constantly vilified on account of his dyed blonde hair, piercings, and the fact that he's over 6 feet tall as a Japanese high school student. His family runs a patisserie, which is how he ends up getting acquainted with Kaoru, who herself is a diabetically sweet girl who also has a surprisingly massive appetite for her size, being able to down a seemingly endless supply of cakes. Just like Romeo and Juliet, tensions arise when the two develop feelings for one another but realize they're from opposing schools. Unlike Romeo and Juliet, the story is about overcoming this hurdle and gradually getting their respective friends and family to accept their relationship. The tension in this show never gets drawn out uncomfortably long, and it ends up just being an insanely cute love story between two people who genuinely appreciate one another. If I had one criticism of this show, it'd be that it definitely puts Kaoru on too much of a pedestal. While she helps Rintaro overcome a lot of his insecurities and even helps him with his school life, the show doesn't give nearly enough insight into Kaoru's perspective or show us any of her flaws, really. It doesn't even give a compelling explanation as to what drew her to Rintaro to begin with. Maybe she's just into the height difference? At any rate, I'm a sucker for a wholesome love story, so this one is definitely a gem in my book, and they only get better from here. My Dress-Up Darling, or Sono Biscudoru wa Koi wo Suru, also by Cloverworks, which just got a new season, is not only a gem, it's one of my favorite love comedies to come out in recent memory. The show is about our two leads, Marin Kitagawa and Wakana Gojo. Marin is the paragon of a gyaru archetype, with dyed blonde hair, elaborate makeup, trendy fashion sense, and trendy lingo and mannerisms to boot. What sets her apart is her love of cosplay and raunchy eroge and visual novels, the type of sub-hobbies that normal people would be roasted alive for admitting to. If I wanted to be reductive, I could say that Marin's not like the other girls, but honestly, the way that she's written makes her a surprisingly complex character. We get a lot of insight into her thoughts at any given moment, which includes her insecurities and worries, and it makes her a lot less one-dimensional than Kaoru from Kaoru Hana. She's also very bubbly and energetic in a way that just makes any scene that she's in that much more fun to watch. Our male lead, Wakana Gojo, couldn't be more different from Marin. He's neither trendy nor an otaku, but instead helps run a traditional Hina doll shop with his grandfather. As with most traditional Japanese crafts, this is the type of work that requires years upon years of apprenticeship to master, so Gojo is very much in the dark when it comes to the types of things that normal high schoolers would be into. The two meet by chance, and it turns out that all the skills and craftsmanship Gojo picked up learning the doll-making trade translate very well to making cosplay outfits, and Marin hires Gojo to put together an outfit for her. The dynamic between these two is a joy to watch, as rather than being put off by Marin's eccentric hobbies, Gojo absorbs everything like a sponge, eagerly immersing himself into the world of cosplay to put together the highest quality outfits that he can, even if that means studying lewd visual novels like it's homework. This was absolutely one of those shows that I looked forward to every week. Also, the outro for this season is an absolute cuteness overload. Another gem that had me checking the calendar every week was Dandadan by Science Saru, and I feel like there's nothing I can say that would really do this show justice. It's simply a must-watch for everyone. Regardless of what you're into, Dandadan has it all. Rom-com, action, sci-fi, horror, surrealism, it's all there and gorgeously animated with an amazing soundtrack. Hell, the music is so good that 80s metal legend X Japan noticed that one of the songs used in a one-off episode this season was a nod to their music, and then went on to get the song taken down from music streaming services in Japan. Never meet your heroes. On the surface, Dandadan looks like another boy meets girl coming-of-age tale of an introverted sci-fi otaku meeting the popular Yarou at school, but it immediately goes completely off the rails when the two find themselves at the mercy of aliens and yokai trying to get their hands on the male lead Okarun's balls and our female lead Momo's, banana organs. Look, there's no way for me to describe the plot to the show that doesn't sound batshit insane due to the surrealist storytelling that's not afraid to transition seamlessly from terror to action to heartwarming, in a way that somehow still manages to feel natural, as opposed to the tonal whiplash that you get in other shows that attempt to do the same thing. Dandadan is an absolute masterpiece, and if you aren't already watching it, you should get on the ball. If Dandadan is a book that can't be judged by its cover, this next show is a gem and a personal favorite of mine that absolutely cannot be judged by its title. Seishun Buta Yarou wa Santa Claus no Yume o Minai, or Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus. The third Cloverworks banger on this list is the fifth arc of the Seishun Buta Yarou series, which I like to refer to as the Bunny Girl Senpai series, after the name of the first season, Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. Yeah, I know. It's a lot. And if the title doesn't make the series hard enough to get into, the fact that the past 3 arcs before this current season were all movies, previously only exclusive to Japanese movie theaters, makes it a hell of a lot worse. Believe me when I say, however, that this is one of the most moving, well-written stories I've ever experienced, and it brought me to tears multiple times, and I'm not joking. The Seishun Buta Yarou, or Aobuta series, as is the shortened term for the light novels they're based on, is told from the perspective of our protagonist, Sakuta Azusagawa. But rather than being about him, the show is about a supernatural illness befalling both him and everyone around him called Shishunki Shokogun, or puberty syndrome. As you can tell from the name, this is an illness that specifically befalls people as they're transitioning through adolescence, and the way it manifests is different depending on the individual's shortcomings or insecurities, resulting in injuries or supernatural phenomena like an inability to be perceived in any way. I committed a bit of an act of blasphemy comparing some Isekai slop to the classic that is Spice and Wolf earlier, but I can confidently say that the Aobuta series evokes the same feelings that I get from Makoto Shinkai films like Your Name and Weathering with You, with writing that's reminiscent of the Monogatari series. It's definitely not an easy watch, and you might find yourself struggling to keep up with some of the exposition, but if you're in the market for a cerebral, emotional roller coaster that may or may not include bunny girl outfits and miniskirt Santas, then this is the show for you. The watch order as of making this is Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, then Rascal Does Not Dream of a Dreaming Girl, then Rascal Does Not Dream of a Sister Venturing Out, then Rascal Does Not Dream of a Knapsack Kid, and the currently aired season, Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus. Now's the perfect time to get into this series, as I believe all of the movies have finally made it to the West, although you may have to do some sailing to find them all in one place. This is another one of those series where the light novels have been on my read list for a while, as the writing is the main appeal of the show, not counting the bunny girl outfit. Our last gem is my personal anime of the season, Yofukashi no Uta, or Call of the Night by Leiden Films. The original mangaka for this one, Kotoyama, wrote Call of the Night as a simple amalgamation of his own interests, and it somehow just all works. The title, Yofukashi no Uta, is based on a song from the hip-hop duo Creepy Nuts, which, once the anime adaptation was set in stone, became the song for the opening, which I find so cool. The show itself is about a lot of things, from nightlife to vampires to insomnia to the dysfunction of society to nurse outfits and midriffs. This show absolutely oozes style from every pore. The music will make you into a Creepy Nuts fan if you weren't already. Kotoyama's art style is gorgeous in a way that's hard to peel your eyes away from, and the quality of the animation put forth by Leiden Films is also impressive enough to do it justice. In the world of Call of the Night, vampires coexist alongside humans relatively peacefully, drinking blood to survive, but doing so without bringing any actual harm, even going so far as to seduce humans into becoming willing subjects. Interestingly, the vampires in the show describe sucking blood as both an act of sustenance and an act of intimacy rolled into one, which puts them in an interesting situation where they have to learn to be more nonchalant about who they engage in this intimate act with. Essentially, they have to learn promiscuity for self-preservation. To further hammer in that nail, if a human who's had his blood sucked by a vampire falls in love with said vampire, they themselves will turn, effectively becoming the offspring of the vampire that bit them. This, of course, raises questions about what love even is, and what kinds of shapes it can take, and the cycle of vampirism starts to look more like a commentary on how we as a society view relationships. In a way, I suppose that's always been what vampire mythos started from. And in the middle of this never-ending cycle of promiscuity, intimacy, and devotion are our two leads, Yamori-ko, an insomniac who doesn't feel like he fits into society and doesn't really understand his own emotions, and Nanakusa Nazuna, a vampire of mysterious origins who happens upon Ko and ends up introducing him to a whole new world. This show is an absolute feast for the eyes and ears, and once you sink your teeth into it, you'll find plenty of depth of flavor even beyond that. If you haven't watched Yofukashi no Uta yet, it may be time to stay up and answer the call. Alright, now to put all these shows into perspective, it's time to bring up my pick for trash of the season. So, when I throw around the word slop, I'm implying that while these shows may not exactly be high art, they still have entertainment value as a way to break the mundanity of life. When I call a show trash, that means I saw absolutely no redeeming qualities in it that made me want to continue watching it. And my pick for trash of the season is a show that got such a visceral rejection out of me that I just had to discuss it. Tsuihosha Shokudo e Yokoso, or Welcome to the Outcast's Restaurant, on its surface looks very straightforward as a merging of the kicked out from the hero's party trope that we've been seeing a lot of lately, and the slice of life cooking anime genre, which I'm personally a huge sucker for. Put a cooking anime at my feet and I will love it. Surely this one will be a nice little cozy story.
Episode 1, Child Slavery. Episode 2.
Alright, so I'm no stranger to risque topics when used carefully to establish grimdark themes like in Goblin Slayer or Berserk, or used respectfully to raise awareness or impact for social commentary. This shit was just plain gratuitous, and is complete tonal whiplash from the entire genre that they were going for. Hell, expecting a comfy show about a guy opening a restaurant and getting hit with graphic sexual assault in episode 2 is a tonal pipe bomb. I'm sure the rest of the show is perfectly unremarkable, but I just felt the need to remark on this one and how it betrayed my already rock-bottom expectations. If anyone out there continued to watch this one, or God forbid read the source material, then by all means let me know in the comments section below where it goes from there, and if it gets better or if it just stays bad. And that's my roundup of the summer 2025 anime season. Again, these are only the shows that I watched, and if there are any that I missed that were some of your favorites this year, leave a comment and let me know what they were and what you liked about them. Also, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Oh, and make sure you have restricted mode turned off, as apparently YouTube's amorphous AI overlords have deemed all of my videos as restricted content. If you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on anime, you may enjoy this video essay I recently put out about the Trail series of JRPGs and their masterful world building. If you'd like to recommend stuff for me to watch, or just want to discuss anime, there's a link to my Discord server in the description down below. Otherwise, my name's been Mount Lover. Keep moving forward.